It would appear geckos express their approval by throwing objects at each other. Zane. Hello, I'm Sensei the Dark Master, and in today's episode of the Lore of Ninjago, we shall be covering the race of diminutive goblin-like ghouls known as geckos. We shall cover their history, culture, abilities, notable members, and weaknesses. Now that we got that covered, let us start with the history of the geckos. The origins of geckos took place so long ago that it has been lost to the mists of time. Whatever the origin, they would eventually come to inhabit the caverns beneath the Shintaro mountain. They would live in peace with the months until an evil dragon called Griefbringer arrived and brought grief and suffering to the two groups of people. All seemed lost, but then they were saved when Lily, who is Cole's mother and the former elemental master of Earth, arrived and utilized the Blades of Deliverance and Spinjitzu Blast to kill the dragon, leaving its rotten skeleton in the pits. She gave the ivory blade of deliverance to the geckos to serve as a symbol of hope, to give them some courage or, hope. She would also give Gleck a necklace with a picture of her and her husband to remember her by. Sadly, the blade would be turned against them when King Vangelis stole the blades and convinced the geckos that the months had stolen them. This created division between the two species and prevented them from uniting against him and his army of reawakened warriors, which were powered by the dark magic of the skull of Hazadur, and he enslaved them. Upon being enslaved, they were forced to mine Vinstone alongside the months, which King Vangelis would sold to an unknown buyer known as the Crystal King, who in turn gave Shintaro the wealth that it needed to prosper into the near utopia it is. Some time passed. Lily died. The ninja were invited to Shintaro by the princess. At one point, Cole would meet one of the geckos, Gleck, and seeing the necklace with his mother, he was inspired to look into the matter. Eventually, he would end up getting captured by the reawakened soldiers, and the other ninja would go to find him. Following some shenanigans, the ninja, in addition to helping Cole come to terms with his mother's passing, would free the geckos, defeat the reawakened warriors, and even the resurrected Griefbringer. He would destroy the skull of Hazador and overthrow the dictatorial Vangelis. Princess Vania, upon assuming the throne, had her father arrested for exploitation and promised to treat the geckos as equals to the sky folk, and that they would no longer be enslaved. The geckos would return to participate in the memorial for Nia after she sacrificed herself by merging into the Endless Sea to defeat Wojira again. They were in mourning then, though I guess since crystallized came out, it means their cries were kind of pointless. Now that the history has been explained, let us discuss their biology and culture. Physically, geckos are all short, purple-skinned creatures with pointed ears, gnarled teeth, and sunken-in yellow eyes. Some describe them as being orc-like, which honestly seems more apt for the months as a description, or elf-like, though. Again, I would say the skyfolk better fit that description. I would say that they're sort of the goblins of Ninjago in terms of appearance, though. Technically, goblins are just a smaller variant of orcs if you really think about it. So I guess the phrase orc-like works for them, but not really. These aren't the Warcraft orcs. These are more like, as I stated before, goblins. But I guess it's up to you, really. Geckle culture is one bound by a complicated legal parliamentary system that actively passes many laws to handle the minutiae of their society. One of which is Proposition 8.8.1 stroke 7A, which forbids the riding of giant snails on Tuesday, or that it is forbidden to be a skeleton. Geckles prove who is guilty by what is called a trial by Mino. A Mino is a massive rhinoceros like subterranean creature used by Geckles as a beast of burden. If you are crushed quickly to death, you are found guilty. If you are crushed slowly to death, or are able to make the creature friendly to you, you are found to be innocent. In order to make decisions quickly, geckos use what is called the slug race. In this, two slugs, a gray one that represents good ideas and a brown one that represents a bad idea, they have them race. Depending on which one wins, the geckos go with that idea. For you see, geckos believe that only the slugs know such things. The geckos have a yearly tradition called the Lever Bonfire Festival, during which geckos burn all their spare levers, so that symbolically they can stop evil from having leverage over their hearts. They enjoy eating moss milk, which is a fungus derived food stock that is beloved as local cuisine, but according to outsiders, tastes putrid and rotten. The geckos have a strong naming convention in which the majority of their names start with G. There are several areas that are considered highly important to them as a people. The Story Cave is a place where they have their written history in their esoteric language. Then there is the Geckle Courthouse, where the rules and parliamentary practices take place in. This is highly important because they are highly dependent on their legal parliamentary system. The home where geckos were staying at during the reign of the Skull Sorcerer is known as the Geckle Strong Cave and is their current place of abode, though it is implied that they've slowly moved out of that since his overthrow. In terms of political structure, the head of Geckle society is known as the Chancellor. These are chosen by an election in which geckos throw stones at them to choose which one will be the chancellor. I'm sure there are some people in the real world that wish you could throw stones at politicians without getting in trouble. Anyway, they are distinguished by a patterned sash that indicates their rank. In terms of noteworthy members, there was Chancellor Gulch, who led his people during the arrival of the ninja, though he temporarily gave chancellorship to Kai. Then there was Ziglek, nicknamed Mr. Sparkles by Princess Vania, who got visits for him on occasion, though she originally believed him to be some sort of imaginary friend until the truth was revealed. He was also the first to see the ninja and indirectly led to the ninja saving his people because Cole got interested in the medallion he had. Then there was Glyph, a balding individual with an eye patch across his right eye. Then there was Garpo, who had a do-rag of some sort. Then there was Ginkle, who had a pair of scythes in the set as weapons, and the obscure Grocco. Finally, we have Mr. Wise, who was a gecko with glasses and a prominent soul patch. Otherwise, he's very similar to Ginkle. Some say he's not canon as his name doesn't start with a G like all the other canon geckos. However, I would counter that this is just a nickname given to Mr. Wise by Kai, so he could very well have an actual name that starts with G. Plus, it doesn't really contradict anything. He doesn't really do anything to interfere with the story of the mountain arc, if you will. In terms of abilities and weaknesses, geckos are pretty much identical to people, though they are considered slightly weaker than them, and especially the months. So there's nothing really to say here with that regard. They're not really anything necessarily unique about them in that respect. What can we learn from the Geckles? Well, we learn the advantages and disadvantages to having excess bureaucracy run our society. It can be useful during times of peace, but can be a problem when big changes or drastic actions need to be done. And that we must learn to handle bureaucracy in our own world before it spirals madlessly out of control. I'm Sensei the Dark Master, and join me next time on The Lore of Ninjago. Have a good day.